Welcome to another episode of A Cuppa with a Conversationalist. My name is Con and I am the Conversationalist. And yes, I have my latte in tow. My guest this morning is all the way from one of my favorite places in the world, Niagara Falls. Big welcome to Diane Konkin. How are you, Diane?
I am really, really well. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here,
Lovely.
especially on your show in Australia. So that's wonderful.
Thank you very much. I should mention as a gratuitous plug that we are downloaded in 20 countries now. So we actually do have quite a large audience in the North America, which is growing as a result of having amazing guests like you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's very impressive. It's wonderful that you're growing so much, and I'm sure it's thanks to you as well, of course.
Oh, thank you very much. Nobody's actually said that to me, Diane. I'm getting quite emotional. Anyway. Who is Diane? Diane Konkin is the founder and director of Advanced Mind Health and Rapid Transformational Therapy trademark practice specializing in intrusive emotions and addictions. She has been 99% successful in helping high-profile clients eliminate their self-sabotaging habits and thought patterns in only 1 to 3 sessions. Wow. RTT is a cutting-edge scientific therapy method that is quickly gaining global recognition as one of the most effective treatments available. Diane, my first question to you is, what led you into this path for this modality?
Interesting. Actually, funny enough, it came out of my search engines targeting me because I was looking for therapy myself at the time. I supported an alcoholic husband. I mean, not financially, but emotionally, and as a spouse does. And he was diagnosed with depression and alcoholism addiction. Depression first, back in the 90s. And so it was like more than 15 years that he struggled. And I watched him. And he eventually passed away. He was 6 years sober when he passed in 2013 of cancer. And, in the beginning, I felt this, it's strange to say, but I felt this immediate relief because I didn't have to be a caregiver anymore. It was so much freedom that I was overwhelmed with. But that only lasts so long before the grief set in. And it was like literally 2 or 3 years later that I started to feel that heaviness and experience it. And I was like, what is going on? And that's when I realized that's what it was. So a friend of mine posted on her Facebook page, has anybody ever tried hypnotherapy before? And I thought, that's interesting. I mean, because many of us have been to at least one therapy session. We talk, we get things off our chest. And we kind of walk away going, did that make any difference? Well, I feel a little better because I, got something off my chest, but then inevitably those emotions come back. And so I Googled hypnotherapy and of course was targeted for Marissa Peer's Rapid Transformational Therapy training program, which eventually I went into after much research. I usually, if something is too good to be true, I back away from it. But this, I did a few months of research. I was extremely impressed with the results. And that's when I knew that I had to do this.
You mentioned about most of us have been to at least one therapy session. I think it's the old adage, there's the people that have been to a therapy session and the people who have lied about being to a therapy session.
Absolutely. And the people that have been for months that, say it works more than it does because of the embarrassment factor of, well, then why do you keep on going if it doesn't work?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Diane, you obviously did your research into the Rapid Transformational Therapy. What is it? So you talk about it being cutting edge and gaining recognition in the globally.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate? What actually is it?
It was, well, the first thing that really impressed me was the woman who developed it. Her name is Marissa Peer. Many of your listeners may know her. She is also gaining global recognition. She's a best-selling author, a global speaker, considered one of Britain's best therapists, if not the world's she's one of the top 500
Wow.
medical professionals in the world who are revered. And she started her practice. Oh, she's been practicing psychotherapy for over 30 years. And somewhere along the line in her career, she took an interest in medical hypnosis. I say medical hypnosis so people don't automatically think the stage show, which is completely different. It's the therapy side of hypnosis, right? It's being in that relaxed state. So you have more access to your memories and your subconscious mind. So she started taking an interest in this purely because, I mean, any therapist or psychologist should know a little bit about it. And I know a lot more psychotherapists are learning the RTT method now that want to have more success with their clients. And so she started incorporating this into her practice and found that her patients were getting better at an alarming rate. And so she thought, okay, I'm going to develop some tools to go along with this. So she, in her training, has given us, I think we keep counting it, somewhere between 9 and 11 different tools that she arms us with and trains us in to use with a client. So depending on how the session is going, what kind of feedback we're getting from them, and we can use it. And it's her practice with the method and her success rate, and then how people really were essentially begging her to start training other people in her method. So she started doing that in 2015. And she took like a year or two to refine the program. She, graduated students mainly in the UK, and then she started teaching it globally. So at the time I started studying in January of 2020. And at the time, I think there were around 3,000 to 5,000 people either practicing or have graduated or in the program. And now I believe it's over 10,000.
Wow.
So doctors are learning it. Some of my colleagues work in some medical conditions like cancer, who are curing cancer patients. I just went to a masterclass the other day with a woman who is working with coma patients, and what her success rate is, because it's all the power of the mind. And we know, yes, our mind has the power to heal ourselves. But then some people kind of go, yeah, but is it proven? Maybe it's a little bit too alternative for me. It's a bit too woo for me, but it's working. And that's what's gaining the global recognition is the results. Exactly.
I don't like to generalize, and I'm sure there's more to it, but briefly, am I to get that this is a form of hypnotherapy?
It is a form of hypnotherapy. Yes. It's a brand new advanced form of hypnotherapy.
So obviously the general pundit here would be hypnotherapy. And as you mentioned before, the stage show, with the, watch the watch, you are getting sleepy, but I understand that that's not the case at all. So Diane, tell me, what are the core principles behind it, or the methodology that makes it work?
Well, Stanford University did a study in 2016 on hypnosis. That's the most recent in the neuroscience world. And it's the first time that they actually took patients and put them in hypnosis and did brain scans on them. And what they found was that the brain of a person under hypnosis opens up, the brain lit up in all the scans. The brain becomes much more receptive to suggestions. It becomes much more open to memories and events. And you are the client is able to answer questions more readily, more immediately. So it's imagine being in a therapy session, but instead of sitting there nervously watching the therapist take notes or looking around the room, because I know that's what I do. And a lot of people I've talked to, it's like, what do? You focus on anything external that you can when you're in that room, because you're kind of avoiding the question and kind of almost telling them what they want to hear or sharing, but in a way that, we still feel judged, right? A lot of us don't open up. So imagine being in a therapy session where you have your eyes closed and you are just in a completely relaxed state. Your body is relaxed. You're not thinking about anything outside of you. And really, it's the state that we go into quite a bit. It's the state that we're in when we miss the exit on the highway, because we're so focused on our thoughts. Or if we're engaged in a movie, we don't notice somebody walking into the room. That's all hypnosis is being engaged in your own thoughts so that the external world kind of drifts away. And in that state, the client makes the connections, they make the discoveries. I ask them questions, we have conversations, I use tools. It's exactly the same, not exactly the same, but it's similar to a talk therapy session, but it's much more targeted. It's much more, like Marissa says, first you be a detective. So you find the root cause of the client's issue. And then you be a dentist and you start extracting it, because everything is from like the beliefs that are in our subconscious mind, the hidden part of our mind, because we forget that 95% of our decisions and actions and behaviors are driven by our subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Exactly, which is the reason why willpower doesn't work, because we're trying to make decisions with only 5% of our mind, or like that decision-making mind. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Exactly. I actually read that the other day. I knew it was quite high, but didn't realize it was 95%. So, and it makes sense. Like I can get out of bed in the morning and go to the coffee machine with my eyes closed. I know exactly where the buttons are. We're just on autopilot.
Absolutely.
Diane, question I do have is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, it's been around a while, but again, it's certainly gaining more recognition, and social media is a wonderful tool to highlight all these things. There's courses, there's certifications, there's goodness knows whatever else. And depending on who you see, an NLP course can cost you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000. Now, what and NLP targets pretty much, the subconscious and changing thought patterns. And what's the prime difference, or first of all, what's the prime difference with what you do to NLP, or can they work hand in hand?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we do use NLP, CBT. Those are things that Marissa has taken from her practice, from a typical psychotherapy practice, and she has worked it into her method. But the beauty is she's expanded on those tools. She said she's learned more from her clients than any institution. So with seeing over like 35 years of practicing thousands of clients and using these techniques on them and seeing what the results are and tweaking them, that's where the difference is. So she's not only incorporates them, she expands on them. And that's only one part of the program. I mean, NLP can help change your thought patterns, but number one, doing it in hypnosis is even more powerful because it goes much deeper, much quicker. And also, it's just one of the tools that's used in the whole spectrum, because it can also not just determine the root cause of the issue, right? If somebody starts changing their thinking and their subconscious mind is still holding on to an old belief, it's going to resurface. Because why? Because our subconscious mind is 95% of what we experience, that influences how we feel. So the root cause is the core issue, is the core method of starting that transformation, for sure.
You've mentioned a number of times during our chat here today about the tools that you have and you use. Are you able to share, I guess, to elaborate for the listeners, I guess, what kind of tools, obviously without giving away trade secrets, so to speak, but are you able to elaborate on, let's say, a process that you take a client or a patient through?
I can certainly take you through the process. I mean, the initial stages, and it's different for everyone, like I said,
I understand that.
Depending on their journey and what they're giving me. But in the beginning, it's obviously the first few minutes are just putting them into a relaxed state. And they don't have to be lying down. Many of them are sitting at their office chairs on their lunch hour or whatever, right? Sitting upright. I had a client that I worked with in Vancouver who was sitting upright, and I was asking her questions and she was blurting out the answer, and she would go, "Oh my goodness, that's really interesting," because she was surprised at how she would answer. So that's the first, is just getting the client into a relaxed state.
Can I just interrupt very quickly? I'm just interested to hear, does this have to be done in person, or is this something that you also do via Zoom? I
actually exclusively work virtually.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So I have clients all over the world.
Okay.
When I first started studying RTT, Marissa was teaching us, like as if we were going to be working in person, ask the person permission if you can touch their arm, or ask the person this, or tell the person this, and sit beside them rather than across from them, and tips. And then when everything went, pandemic wise, I'll let you fill in the adjective. When the pandemic came forward,
I'll edit it.
There you go. When we weren't able to, then that's when we started doing more practice sessions online.
Okay.
And we were learning that it was just as effective, if not more, because clients don't have to get in their car and drive to some strange office, right? And sit in a cold room, in a waiting room, and be nervous and get called in. They get to be at home. Some of my clients, they lay in bed and put their laptops on their nightstand, right? I say, as long as I can see your face. Some sit in their favorite comfy chair. So yes, for sure.
Okay.
It can be done online for sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So you go through the detective stage, as we call it.
Exactly. Finding the root cause. So it's just a matter of asking the client to start to think up of memories or events or scenes that was the cause of their issue today. I worked with a gentleman, or I am working with a gentleman. His session was for alcohol addiction. He's been in a rehab 5 times. Wow. And he's been a binge drinker for over 25 years. Exactly. And this method he's like, within his first few weeks, he said he did notice a big difference, especially in procrastinating, because once you solve one issue, it ripples into the other issues. But I asked him to talk about events or scenes or memories that were all to do with why he acquired an addiction. And he came up with 3 scenes that were all when he was under 9 years of age. Now, he was not drinking when he was 3 years old or 6 years old or 8 years old. But when I asked his mind, right, when I say him, but yes, I mean, and what happens is the client of a scene will just flood into their mind when I ask them a question, because it's the mind showing them what they want to know. Right. And so these scenes we looked at, we were like, okay, let's look at these. What are the beliefs you formed in these scenes? How are they linked together? How can you tell me how they are the cause of your issue today? And when we look at it and we start examining it and what beliefs are, and we start picking it apart, and they make the connection, which is most important. I mean, I'm not telling them, I'm just sort of asking questions to guide them so they can see for themselves. And when they put the 2 and 2 together, that's their aha moment. That's their, oh my goodness, I never looked at it that way before, right? So I can point that out to them, or they can discover it. I can support that. And then we can discuss that. And then we can start the reframe process, right? Like, what beliefs did you form in your subconscious mind as a child? Because our subconscious minds are formed between the ages of 0 and 7. And those are the parts of our mind that are hidden to us, but they do form what I call our operating system. And we are adamant about upgrading the operating systems in our computer. But when it comes to our own emotional well-being, then people are resistant to that. They're like, no, I can figure it out on my own. I can do this. Or there's a stigma, right? Why are you going to addiction treatment? You should be able to do this. It's a choice. Alcoholism isn't a disease, it's a choice. So they hear all of these things. It sort of affects their negative self-talk. And so did the beliefs that they had formed originally, feeds into the negative self-talk. And then they're in this state where, they don't know what to do. And it's nothing that they can help themselves. And that's where you get outside help. And that's where, but you want outside help that's going to be fast, right? Especially in this world. And now we think, especially with therapy, we think if it's fast, it's not going to be good. But like I said, I've had 99% success with my clients. They all come out of the session going, wow, that was amazing. I can't believe what I discovered. And so the session is what really helps make them feel lighter and freer and give them understanding, which is power.
Yeah.
Because change comes from recognition. But then I leave them with a 10 to 15 minute personalized audio recording. And the audio recording is what they listen to daily for at least 21 days. Why 21? Because that's how long science tells us it takes to form a habit. That's how long it takes for those new neural pathways to get groomed in your brain. And that's what creates your new thought processes of the new behavior that you want.
Just touch on that recording that you leave them with. That's obviously a specialized recording. It's not a recording of the session.
No.
It's part of the process, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's what I call the transformational recording. So once we finish the session and we do the work, then I say to the client, okay, I'm going to start your recording now. You did amazing work, because most of them do. And then I'll say, and just feel free to, lie back and relax and just listen. And then I record the recording for them, and I insert things in the session that we've done. And it's repetitive, and it excites the imagination. And that's what opens up the brain and stimulates it.
There's the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And the other saying is obviously when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. There's got to be this want, this need to initiate change. You mentioned, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You mentioned
Sure.
99% success rate. So there's someone somewhere where, for reasons, it hasn't worked.
Yes.
Can you share, first of all, what the problem was? Was it an addiction? Was it a compulsive behavior? What was it? And in your perspective, your view, why didn't it work?
My first client that I didn't have success with, and of course, I had to learn not to take that personally. We try as therapists to help our clients, obviously, and we care about that. But I had to separate myself from that and not take it as a personal failure, because it's my job to guide the client, but it's their job to do the work. I open the door, but they have to walk through it, right? And the first client I actually probably shouldn't have taken, because I don't take all clients that come to me. Some I say, I don't think we're a fit. Either they don't believe in the method and they kind of come to me with, okay, show me what you got, right?
They're cynical from the
like,
outset.
Yeah. So it's like, exactly. So this woman was a little bit like that. And I always make sure in my consultation before I book a client, I ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to resolving this problem? And anything under 9, I question. Anything under 10, I question. And she was a 9. And I asked her why, and she said, I'm only committing 9 because I never commit to anything. And right then, that was a red flag for me.
I was going to say.
Well, but the thing is that she was a friend of a doctor colleague who was a little bit of a mentor to me at the time. And I thought, okay, no, this is a challenge. So I think he's giving me a challenge to see how I do. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm up for the challenge. And then in the session, she was extremely distracted. She decided to do it outside of her home. And right after I started guiding her through this relaxation meditation, her neighbor started cutting down a tree and there was noise, and she kept having to move around and then go inside and get her headphones. And then, so it was really quite difficult. And, and she even came back in a Facebook group a few months ago and said, don't forget, it didn't work for me. And I said, yes, but I often wonder how it would have worked if you weren't distracted and if you were committed, and a 10 out of 10. Yeah. So it's like, you have to take some ownership in that as well. Right.
Absolutely you do.
So, and then, and then she had me re-record the recording a little bit, a few times, which is fine, because I'm happy to do that, just to make sure it works for the client. And then my other client was someone who had quite a bit of trauma. And when she got into that relaxed state, she just saw a lot of darkness. And I've had that before with clients. I actually recently worked with a client who had a lot of child abuse in her youth. I mean, a lot, from when her mother passed when she was 5, straight up until when she was 18 and left the house to get married. And I mean, amazingly enough, she worked her way up through business, was a senior VP of an international company, but she had the hardest time with low self-esteem and confidence, standing up for herself. So, and a lot of her scenes were darkness, but it's like, okay, but that's all right. That can be normal. But what is the feeling associated with that darkness? And then we start working that way, right? Like every client will present differently. They'll present different issues. different beliefs, different scenarios, and that's when we start looking at it. And within that first 2-hour session, they come out of it with a major understanding of what was causing their issue and that they don't have to believe that anymore.
It's really interesting you talk about a person in that level of business or authority or whatever you want to call it, having low self-esteem. And I find that a really interesting concept, because there's a lady I'm actually working with at the moment who is exactly the same. She's in a really, really high position.
Absolutely.
And to look at her, you go, wow, this lady has got her stuff together.
Exactly.
But
yeah,
when
but
you
that's
when you talk to them, they've got major, for a whole host of reasons, there's massive self-esteem issues.
yeah.
And I wonder, and I'd be interested in your thoughts here, for somebody who has low self-esteem, it's not something that comes on overnight. As you said, it's certainly developed over time and magnifies as we get older in some situations, I would imagine. How does somebody who has that low level of self-esteem actually push through and get to almost the top of their game? That's like a real dichotomy to me.
Well, because they are educated and they're confident, for one thing. We can't equate confidence with self-esteem. Someone can be highly confident, but they don't think much of themselves. They can be self-assured in knowing that they can communicate well, that they can target an audience, that they can make their sales pitch, that they can lead a group of staff members, that they can carry out their tasks like the C-suite professional that they are. But there may be that, that low self-worth. I had a client recently who was making a lot of money. And she came to me and she said, it freaks me out. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I'm growing my business and my business is getting more successful. And it freaks me out. I said, I don't even know what that means. I couldn't grasp that. And she said, well, I think, how did that happen? And that was just a fluke. It won't happen again. And she didn't feel worthy of that revenue that she was making. And it was her talent that was producing that revenue, right? So there's self-esteem, there's self-worth, there's lovability, right? We don't think we're lovable. That's why we separate ourselves or isolate ourselves or tell ourselves we'll never be in a loving relationship because it's just the kind of personality I have. Right. So yes, so these people are often C-suite professionals, and that's who a lot of my clients are. I work with high profile professionals, with even some people entertainers in the film and TV and acting business. And these are people that to look at them, you would think, like you said, they've got it all together, but many of them don't. They carry on fine, but it's like the addiction people that I deal with. They're high functioning. Nobody really knows they have an addiction. They suffer in silence with all of these issues. People aren't they don't show it. So that's where I come in to fix it.
It's interesting you mentioned that about, hiding these things. I actually interviewed a gentleman in the early days of the podcast. And I'm sure he has no problem in mentioning his name because he's quite happy to promote it and he's very, very open about it. Mark, if you listen to this, Mark Sandico, you know who you are. Mark and his wife run a business called Magnificent Mindset. Coaching relationships and business mentoring and the like. And Mark told me the fascinating story. He grew up in a loving home, not affluent, but not scratching for groceries. Started off marijuana, a little bit of substance abuse, got bigger and bigger and bigger. And he was an ice addict when he was a top-level corporate executive, and he hid it from his wife and family for years. And I'm listening to this guy and I'm stunned. You've got this addiction that is catastrophic and soul and relationship and every aspect of your life destroying, and you're carrying on life like, I just find that fascinating.
It is fascinating. And until it happens to you, you can never understand it. I was always the same way. I was always, how could you not know? How ridiculous is that? I'm a savvy professional and it happened to me. I'm highly educated and I was living with a highly educated, high functioning professional who was my spouse. And this all came crashing down on him with first his depression, because he was such a high achiever and he couldn't sustain that at the rate he was going and the intensity he was going. So one night he just crashed. He was diagnosed with depression and it all kind of went spiraling down from there. And alcohol was the only thing that would help him feel better. But I didn't know that until years later. He was using alcohol to self-medicate and heavily, but he was never one of those falling down drunks. He just needed it to level out, to actually function. That's what was his secret to functioning. And I had no idea. So it can happen, fascinatingly enough. Yes.
I struggle to function without drug and alcohol sometimes, and I'm amazed how
that's why the coffee.
Oh yeah, don't take my coffee away from me, Diane. Don't take my coffee away from me. Diane, just before we wind up, talk about the RTT method and the work that you do. In the intro that you provided to me, you talk about intrusive emotions, addictions, and self-sabotaging habits. I would think that 100% of the population have got something along those lines.
Absolutely. But I mean, there are stages in being ready to change, right? I mean, especially with substance use, or even things like depression or anxiety, when people in your family or people outside start to say to you, you should really get some help here, right? And sometimes people go and get help because they are being pressured by their close friends and family. This gentleman that I was treating that was in and out of rehab for addiction, he said the first time he went, all he did was play pool. He's like, it was fine to not drink, and all we did was watch movies and play pool, right? And so, but he wasn't ready to change. Like, he came out of addiction and just started drinking again. Then the step closer is when you kind of start to listen to the people that are advising you, and you say to yourself, okay, maybe I do have a problem. Right? Maybe there is something in this. Maybe my life could be better if I addressed this issue. And then the final stage is really being mentally and emotionally ready for this to get out of your life. You don't want it anymore. It's an obstacle, it's a block, and it's frustrating you. And that's the point where most of my clients are when they come to me, because they're just like, I tell them how it works and they're like, yes, here's my credit card, let's just do it. And those are the ones that have the most success, right? Or the quickest success, I should say, for sure. So does that answer your question? Sorry.
It does. It does.
Yes.
And it actually leads me to another question. We talk about the impact of our herd. In other words, the people that we spend the most amount of time with. And again, depending on what you read and what you want to believe, we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Now, you've made an interesting point regards to some of your patients or clients coming to you where there's been influence from the people, you know, their family, their loved ones, saying, hey, you know, there's an issue, you need to look at it, you need to get some professional help, etc., etc.
Right.
What do you see in the reverse? In other words, people coming to you where, for whatever the catalyst was, with, hey, Diane, I've got this problem, please, I need your help.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not getting the support in their relationships, their families, their circle. How does that play out in terms of either separating themselves from that group of people, or unfortunately regression?
Mm. You mean they're not getting the support post-treatment?
Yeah.
Well, when the issue is gone, though, their family members are more than supportive, right? I mean, when they come home and or go back to their spouses or family, and they talk about the session, and they tell them like how lighter they feel and how much better they feel and all the things they discovered and figured out, it starts to change them.
Yeah.
So
that's not what I meant. I didn't explain it very well. Let me go back one step. Let me paint a scenario for you. Let's say,
okay, sure.
My partner and I, we're druggies. Okay, we're ice addicts, or we've got whatever our habit is. And I've woken up one morning and I'm going, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I need help. I find Diane. Diane, please, can you help me? Absolutely, I can help you. Diane helps me, and I'm feeling better. My issue, whatever it is resolved, but I'm still going back to a relationship that is as it was. There has to be some conflict, does there not?
You mean if your spouse is still using?
Correct.
Right. Not necessarily, because in the session and in the transformational recording, we talk about that. And I say, you know, like, now that you figured it out, like, you don't want to do this. And that's the key, is they don't want to do the behavior anymore. And the number one rule of the mind is it will always do exactly what it thinks you want it to do. Okay. So when you've gone that deep and you've changed your belief system, you've actually changed the wiring in your brain, you've laid in those new neural pathways, and you've changed the neuroplasticity of your brain, you're not going back there. So that's what protects you. Right. And I even say to them in the recording, you can be around other people who are drinking, and that only reinforces your complete disinterest, you know, and indifference to that substance. Right. And the more, like, the longer you stay clean, the better it feels, and the better it feels, the longer you stay clean. Right.
Fair enough.
So this is all the repetition, and even in the scenarios, because the way you feel about anything comes down to two things: the words you say to yourself and the pictures you make in your head. So if I can create those visualizations for them in the language that I use as well, it's even doubly powerful. So I say, imagine you're out at a party right now. Somebody offers you a drink and you say, no, thanks. I don't drink. And you feel so good about your decision. You say it calmly and you feel empowered by this, right? So it's all about the language and the visualization. So that's what. And then as far as the support of the spouse, that's a whole different issue, right? If you want your spouse to come in, we could do relationship issues. We could do whatever.
That's definitely another conversation. Diane, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you this morning, all the way from Niagara Falls.
Yes.
I mentioned to you, it's one of my favorite places on earth. If you walk your dog and you walk past the falls, and there's strange ethnic man with glasses in a deck chair staring lostly at the water coming over, it's probably me. Just tap me on the shoulder and say hello.
Perfect. Perfect.
Diane,
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
thank you so much. My guest this morning has been Diane Konkin, all the way from Niagara Falls. My name is Con. I am the Conversationalist. And until next time, bye for now.